Okay, so when we mention metabolism, you guys, what are we talking about? Everybody, come up with something in your head right now. What does metabolism mean to you? Metabolism. So how easily your body processes things. Okay. You guys with me? Okay. So what else do you think of when you think of this word metabolism? Breaking things down. Uh-huh.
An organism trying to stay in a comfortable state.
Okay, an organism's trying to stay in a comfortable state. What else do you guys think of metabolism? Breaking down food to get energy. Anybody else? Something else? Close that so you can be really concentrated. Oh, okay. 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 Okay, so now let's convert these. Those are all fabulous answers. Okay? Let's convert it to a little bit higher level. So I'm looking for a vocab term, two-part vocab term that has to do with this breaking down, processing, keeping things at equilibrium or homeostasis. What is this? This is the sum total of all what? Okay, so all of you can answer this one question. Let me make it a little simpler here. So breaking down is a what? What causes things to break down? Okay, we're going higher level. So decomposition is one type of these. Decomposition what? Reactions. So we're talking about then when we break things down or we need to make things, what are those? What type of reactions? It's so simple, you're missing it. What? So we're just talking about chemical reactions. Oh, I didn't hear that one. Okay, so chemical reactions is the definition of metabolism. It's the sum total going on in all of your cells. If you're multicellular, if you're unicellular, your metabolism is all the chemical reactions in that one cell. That's all metabolism is. Okay? All right, so we got that. Now, the second bullet, though, what is that? Metabolism is an emergent property of life that arises from interactions between molecules within the cell. It's kind of pretty, but it's also kind of wordy. But if you remember chapter 1, they talked about the emergent properties of life that allow life to exist, like the key things. So metabolism is a huge, important thing. And if you look at your big ideas, metabolism having to do with energy, having to do with chemical reactions, it's one of your big ideas in AP Bio, in general biology. Okay, so awesome. So you guys were talking about decomposition reactions. You guys were already up there. So then let's get a little vocab word here. So a metabolic pathway begins with a specific molecule and ends with a product. So in most cases, these reactions take a series of reactions. So we call them a metabolic pathway. And we have catabolic pathways, and what do these guys do? Catabolic stands for what? So read it, you guys. So what about energy? It's released. So these are endo or exothermic? Exothermic reactions, and yes, I heard it over there too. And then the other thing to remember is if we're getting energy, we're breaking things down, right? So we're starting with larger molecules and ending with simpler molecules. Maybe we're getting down to those monomers. So cellular respiration, breaking down glucose, right? Down into, what do we exhale? carbon dioxide, and then people don't realize it, but you're busy making water as well. Okay, so we take a big, imagine that glucose molecule. Hopefully you guys have that vision of that ring structure. I think most of you got to build it, right? That's very complex, 6 carbon molecule. And all that's left is water and carbon dioxide, 2 very smaller types of molecules. And in the process, we got a lot of ATPs out of it. So just here, just showing the step-by-step by pathways. Opposite of catabolic is what? Anabolic. And what happens in this one? We consume it, and we're going to build what from simpler molecules? Complex or larger ones. So bioenergetics is simply the study of organisms and their, what I got here, change their energy resources. What do I have there? This thing won't move. It drives me, manage their energy resources. Okay? Okay, so I hope this looks familiar. So energy is the capacity to cause change. For the word change, what's the universal symbol of change? The triangle, the delta sign, right? So I would use it. Simplify your life there a little bit. So it exists in various forms, some of which can perform work and can be converted from one form to another. So we have kinetic energy, and this has to do with motion, okay? Heat, thermal energy. It is kinetic energy associated with random movement of atoms. So what happens to the atoms in here as we increase the temperature in the room? They're moving more. They're smashing into each other more. So can you see how it's a type of kinetic energy? Okay. Potential energy is the energy that matter possesses because of its location or structure. So my disaster up here. There's all sorts of entropy up here. But this has a potential of energy just sitting right up here. I used the energy to put it up there. And then also its structure. So back to those molecules. So glucose has a lot of potential energy in it as compared to, say, carbon dioxide. Chemical energy is potential energy available for release in chemical reactions. So let's check this out.
Cause change. Kinetic energy is the energy associated with motion. Energy that is not kinetic is called potential energy, and is energy that matter possesses because of its location or structure. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, but converted from one form to another. This property is called the conservation of energy.
The bow and arrow start out with low potential energy. As the archer's arm pulls back the string, kinetic energy from the arm's motion is converted to potential energy in the tense bowstring and arrow. When the bowstring is released, the stored potential energy is converted into the kinetic energy of the moving arrow. When the arrow hits the target, its motion ceases. If energy is neither created nor destroyed, where did the energy of the flying arrow go? Let's rewind and look at kinetic energy in more detail. When energy is converted from potential energy to kinetic energy, some of the energy can be used to do work, but some energy ends up as heat, a type of kinetic energy. Heat is the random motion of atoms and molecules. As the arrow flies through the air, heat is generated by friction between the arrow and air molecules. When the arrow strikes the target, all the energy becomes heat energy. The heat energy is rapidly transferred into the air and spreads out. Heat energy is a very disordered kind of energy. It has the highest amount of entropy, or disorder, of any kind of energy. Where do our muscles get energy to perform work, such as pulling back a bowstring? Our bodies use the chemical energy from food to perform work. Chemical energy is a form of potential energy. When your body breaks down food molecules, the stored potential energy from food can be converted to kinetic energy. The stored chemical energy in food is released in your muscle cells during the process of cellular respiration. Using oxygen, cellular respiration converts chemical energy from food to another form of chemical energy called ATP. Water, H2O, and carbon dioxide, CO2, are byproducts of cellular respiration. The potential energy of ATP can be converted to kinetic energy. Some of the kinetic energy is used to do useful work, such as pulling back a bowstring, but the heat energy that is generated cannot be used to do work.
Okay, so that was a very good overview. Okay, so thermodynamics is the study of this transformation of energy. So right here, we got P for potential, K for kinetic. Okay, so this guy right here, which one is it? What's this one right here? Okay, now, who has a greater amount of potential? This guy or then this guy? Okay, so just being able to evaluate. So you have the laws of thermodynamics. There's two of them. The first one is that energy of the universe is constant. Energy cannot be transferred and transformed, but it can be transferred or transformed, but it cannot be created or destroyed. So I really want you guys to really think about this and try your best not to use a few words that we do a lot. Like, the enzyme wasn't there anymore. The enzyme disappeared. It didn't have the enzyme anymore. Then that's just even there. That one's just mass, right? Matter cannot be created or destroyed, right? So things just change, right? Things get rearranged. When you use the word created, that, if you look at the definition, it really means that something came from nothing. But we use it sometimes as a synonym for like building or making, right? So be careful with that word, especially on these free responses, because they will be interpreted against this statement right here, or the conservation of matter statement. Okay, so the first law is also called the principle of the conservation of energy, right? Just like the one with matter. Now the second one, I have one of my biggest problems in my life is constantly fighting this. You can see it in my classroom all the time. So every energy transfer or transformation increases the entropy, which is disorder. And so it takes a lot of energy to continue to fight the second law of thermodynamics. And you are so highly organized and put together in such a complex way that your cells have to constantly fight this as well. Because things just tend towards randomness. Things tend to spread out. And you can see that with my desk. I don't know if you got to see a glimmer, but my wonderful aide, Sitlali, had this desk all cleaned up for me last week. Did you guys notice that? And look at it now. It's just awful. And maybe this happens in your bedrooms or your cars. And you have to put that work back into it constantly. So look at these examples here. So here you have the first law of thermodynamics, where you're having transfers of energy. Nothing's created, nothing's destroyed. So we want to say the deer was destroyed, but the deer wasn't destroyed, the matter of the deer, and then the energy, the potential energy in the molecules of the deer was transferred into the cheetah. A lot of it was what? Lost as heat. Now, it's lost then to the universe, right? So matter is easier for us to understand. We can see it, we can touch it, and so the law with matter, like, there's always the same amount of water on Earth. We get that. Energy is harder, it's more abstract. We can't feel it well. We can feel its effects, right? But we can't see it necessarily. Again, at times we could see flames, but it's more difficult, but it's the same thing. Energy is not created or destroyed. It might get to a state where we can't harness it. It's always about us humans, right? We want to take everything and use everything. Okay, and that's just what life does. Okay, and then we have the second law of thermodynamics. So as the cheetah is running, there's all sorts of energy transfer going, right? And so he's losing lots of heat. He's breaking things down. And then that energy is being moved into the environment. Okay, so then you see this, this is, I think, a plant tissue. So these are individual cells. And here you can see these dyed chloroplasts, actually. I'm going to guess this is a stem or a root. And there's not a lot of green, but it's been stained. But it was probably a root. And so some of the cells are highly specialized and have chloroplasts still. And then these cells have actually now died. And that's where water or food is being moved through. So it's highly specialized, and that took a lot of energy to keep it all organized, to fight that entropy. Okay, so then we switch to this section here. Free energy, change of a reaction tells us whether or not the reaction occurred spontaneously. So without us putting more energy into the system, into the reaction, it just happened using the energy that was free and available to it. So we want to know which reactions occur spontaneously and which require input of energy. Why? Why does anybody care about this? So why do we want to understand all these reactions inside our bodies? Let's go back to homeostasis. What does homeostasis mean? So homeo, same, static, same. We have to have all our chemicals in our body, the temperature, which is affected by the reactions in our body, have to stay at a certain range. So if it's not, then this is called disease. Lots of times we use this word only for scary diseases, but if you really look at the definition of a disease, it's whenever your body is not working the way it's supposed to be working. So a cold, in essence, then you could say is a disease. But anyway, so if we're going to understand how to fix ourselves, we've got to know this. Okay, so then we need to be able to understand a little more calculations here. So the living system's free energy, let's try and memorize this right now. It's called delta G. So the change in G, this is free energy. And energy that can do work when temperature and pressure are uniform as a living cell. So this energy is available to do what? Work. This gets a little confusing. Okay, are we losing it? Can we use it? So delta G is called free energy, and it can do work. So check it out. The change in delta G during a process is related, of course, to the change in entropy, because we have this law where things are increasing in disorder. And so it's related to change in entropy or the change in the total energy in the system. So that's called delta H. Change in entropy is delta S, and then we have to include temperature, and it's always going to be converted to Kelvin, and that's a way they can get you, right? If they give it to you in Celsius, you have to convert it to Kelvin. So only processes with a negative delta G are spontaneous. Spontaneous processes can be harnessed to perform work. So free energy is the measure of a system's instability, its tendency to change to a more stable state. During a spontaneous change, free energy decreases. Let's think about that. During a spontaneous change, free energy decreases. We're going to lose more free energy, and the stability of the system increased because the energy transferred to making something more organized. So in equilibrium is the state of maximum stability. Now, we tend to think that everything is always best if it's balanced. That's not necessarily true, right? We use this in social settings too a lot, like with equilibrium, right? That everything needs to be fair, right? We think about it from that concept too. But sometimes it's better not to be balanced, and I'll show you in a minute here. A process is spontaneous and can perform work only when it's moving towards equilibrium. So once you're in equilibrium, everything's going to kind of stop. But what if you need it not to stop? Okay, so here's a nice overview. You have gravitational motion here. You have diffusion. And then you have chemical reactions happening. So then let's look at these G's and stuff. So up here we have more free energy. It's a higher G. This is the part that I struggle with if you're not very abstract. Every time I go over this, I got to get it all straight in my head again, because I'm not walking around daily talking about delta G and delta S and delta H, right? Okay, so think about this. Up here we have a higher G. It's less stable, even though, boy, it looks packed and stuff. But it doesn't want to stay this way. It's not going to stay this way. It has higher potential. Okay, so then if it's spontaneous change, the free energy of the system decreases. It becomes more stable. So when he's down here floating in the water or standing on the bottom, the released free energy can be harnessed to do work. What if his splash, right? His splash is transferred. Well, what if there was somebody on a floaty a few feet away who was trying to move in one direction? That person on the floaty got some free energy. Okay, and then down here. So we have less free energy. It's more stable. There's less work capacity. Potential energy has been lowered. Okay, we slightly mentioned this, and I heard it sounded like you guys remember this well. Exiting, right? This is we have a net release of free energy. It's spontaneous. Endogonic, absorbs free energy, non-spontaneous. Okay, so let's look at some graphs here. Get a little familiar with what's going on. You guys do it. Look at it. Which one's catabolic? Top or bottom? Bottom. Okay, now this might sound silly, but how I keep, and I think there's a better way if you guys know your Greek and your Latin words, but with catabolic, right, it's the extra C in front of the word. It's a little bit longer. That's how I memorize it. It makes things. It's bigger. Okay, so a little back to equilibrium and metabolisms. So what about a closed system versus an open system? So in here, we release energy. It's free to leave the room. But what if we have that in a container where it's a closed system? Then things can change. So in a closed system, eventually, it will reach equilibrium. And then there's no more free work. Okay, cells are not in equilibrium. They are open systems experiencing a constant flow of materials. That means that we need a constant input then of materials and energy. So a defining feature of life is that metabolism is never at equilibrium. A catabolic pathway in a cell releases free energy in a series of reactions. Closed and open hydroelectric systems can serve as analogies. What's hydroelectric? You know these things, but some of these words are wordy and we don't put them together. What does hydro stand for? Water. What do you think a hydroelectric system is? So something to do with energy, making power. What are we talking about? Dams. We're talking about dams. Damn it, we're talking about dams. Here they are. Maybe you always just think of a dam as just that barrier, but there's things in the dam that are making electricity. There are a couple of stagnant dams that are just trying to hold back some water, right? And the water can flow over if it gets too high. But most of the time we want to harness that potential energy and turn it into electricity. Okay, so now let's look at it here. We have an isolated hydroelectric system. So this is closed. Do you guys see that? Do you see how it'll get to equilibrium and then it has no more potential energy? Okay, what about if we keep the system open? Will it always be spinning that thing as long as we have an input? So we can always grab that energy up. Okay? And then if we do it in a series of reactions, we can get more of it. And that's what your body is doing. It uses these pathways to control things and to get as much energy out of the reactions as possible. Okay, so we have three main kinds of work. We have chemical, transport, and mechanical. To do work, cells manage energy resources by coupling. This is what I was just showing you. Coupling. Breaking it down into a series. The use of exergonic processes drive an endergonic one. Most energy coupling in cells is mediated by ATP. We got to use some to get some. Okay, so let's take a break right there. You guys stand up, chit-chat, and I'm going to get a model out that I forgot to get out for you guys. Go do a little lap around the room. You guys should remember though, ATP is adenosine triphosphate. You have an adenine, there it is, adenine. There's nitrogen in it. It's a nitrogenous base. You have a ribose. So this is a little piece, actually to here, the 1-phosphate. This is a nucleotide. Do you guys see that? That is a nucleotide. That's adenine. So here's a molecule with a slight adjustment. Let's bond a phosphate to it, bond another phosphate to it. Has a totally different function then. It's your little energy storing molecule. Or your little, I shouldn't say storing, your little energy providing molecule. All right, so refocus. Let's get a little more of this thing done. Okay, you guys with me?
Yes.
Because wouldn't it be cool if we just got this thing done and we wouldn't have to do it for the rest of the chapter? Okay, you guys are doing great. Okay, so here walks you through what I was just talking about. But let's bring it back to delta G's and stuff. So the release of energy comes from the chemical change of a state of lower free energy, not from the phosphate bonds themselves. So let's think about that. You guys with me? The release of energy comes from the chemical state, a chemical change to a state of lower free energy, not from the phosphate bonds themselves. It's just that break, that change, that transformation that allowed a little bit of energy to be used. So here it is. So ATP becomes ADP. Hey, the things don't just disappear. Now we have a free phosphate that can be used for whatever it needs to be used for. And lots of times that's just going to be used in a reverse way, where we're going to have to put energy in the system and make it back into an ATP. Okay, 3 types of cellular work. Mechanical, I did that already. Oh, now, here's another thing. Like dams, cells also use what we call hydrolysis. It's not water, it's hydrogen ions. You guys with me on that? So cells use hydrogen ions like water in dams. In the cell, the energy from an exergonic reaction of ATP hydrolysis can be used to drive an endergonic reaction. Overall, the coupled reactions are exergonic. Okay, so let's look at this example. Eyes up here, let's process this diagram, you guys. So you got glutamic acid reactant with ammonia reactant. The reaction happens, we got a delta G of positive 3.4 kilograms per mole. ATP phosphorylation, so the ATP here, the free phosphorus attached to the glutamic acid. Now we have ammonia displaces the phosphate group, they bond, and then we get a free one again. So we have a coupled reaction. It wasn't simply this. First step, second step. If you notice here, the first one ended with positive delta G, free energy. The second one, the energy is released. Net, we have a negative delta G. So ATP drives endergonic reactions by phosphorylation. Now phosphorylation happens when the reaction is actually putting the phosphate back onto the ADP. I will show you another way that ATP is used. That's not called phosphorylation. But we say that molecule was phosphorylated. Now, if you're like, holy whatever, Mrs. Coop, don't worry, okay? Some of you are good at this and you're following it. Some of you are like me and barely hanging on. It's okay. We're going deeper on this, And then we just need to be able to understand it with a practical sense. Okay? All right, so check this one out. So we have a solute. Do you guys see? Here's a good question. This is more practical. So is there a concentration gradient between the circles? Is there a concentration gradient with those circles in the first box? Going the opposite way, right? It would diffuse if it could get through the opposite way. But the cell needs more of them. So we're going against the concentration gradient. So is it going to be active or passive? Active. And do we have a protein involved? Yes, okay. So look at the phosphate there. So there's a phosphate is actually doing a reaction with the protein. Do you see that? And then that transfer of energy allows it to be pumped against the concentration gradient. Now, on the bottom here, it can also be used to move stuff. So here we have a vesicle that's being transferred on cytoskeleton, and we need the ATPs to help with that. So the ATP binds non-covalently, so it's just attracted there to motor proteins, and then it's hydrolyzed. Don't worry about it. Let's just hang in there here. Okay, so ATP is a renewable resource because once we use it once, can we fix it and use it again? Yeah, we just have to give it its phosphate back. Now that's an important concept because like glucose, the whole molecule is not being broken down, just the very end. All right. So here's a nice little picture of that. Okay, let's get to enzymes. Or maybe I'll have you guys build these yourselves. That would be more fun. We'll do that. Okay, so vocabulary. A catalyst is a chemical agent that speeds up reaction rate. Now help me. Let's memorize this right now. It speeds up reaction rate by lowering what? Yes, the needed energy. What's the name of that needed energy to make a reaction happen? The energy it's probably going to use is ATP. So it's called activation energy. Okay? All right. A catalyst can be anything that is going to do this. Light, friction, heat, or in cells, we don't want friction going on. We don't want, plants are really good at collecting that light energy. We'll talk about that later. But we need it very controlled, otherwise too much energy is going to hurt the cell. So what the cell has done to have catalysts is to make enzymes. Enzymes are types of what? Enzymes are catalysts, and they're types of proteins. Okay? So, we're good there. So hydrolysis of sucrose, which means we're going to be breaking apart. We're going to get a water molecule by the enzyme sucrase. Okay, look at this, you guys. You should know OS should tell you it's a what? A sugar or a carbohydrate. Look at this. ACE should tell you that this is a what? What? It's an enzyme, and yes, it's a protein, but it's telling you what type of protein it is. Like catalase, like amylase, these are all enzymes. So there's your picture. So they called it hydrolysis because it released water. It's also known as a dehydration reaction. Okay, so every chemical reaction between molecules involves bond breaking and bond forming. The initial energy started to start a chemical reaction is called free energy of activation. It's called activation energy. It's supplied in the form of heat from the surroundings. So EA is what again? Activation energy. Now look at this. Make sure you understand it. So it's trying to show you that the bonds are being stressed because of the energy. They broke and then recombining. Okay, so let's watch this. You guys are doing great.
If exergonic reactions occur spontaneously, what keeps molecules from breaking apart and cell chemistry from racing out of control? For any reaction to occur, even a downhill reaction, some energy must be added to get the reaction going. This energy is needed to break bonds in the reactant molecules. The energy needed to start a chemical reaction is called the energy of activation, E sub A. This required energy input represents a barrier that prevents even energy-releasing exergonic reactions from occurring without some added energy. How does a living cell overcome the energy barrier so that its metabolic reactions can occur quickly and precisely? A special kind of protein called an enzyme is the answer. An enzyme serves as a biological catalyst, increasing the rate of a reaction without being changed into a different molecule. An enzyme does not add energy to a reaction. Instead, it speeds up a reaction by lowering the energy barrier. An enzyme is very selective. Its three-dimensional shape allows it to act only on specific molecules, referred to as the enzyme substrates. As the substrates bind to the enzyme's active site, they are held in a position that facilitates the reaction. This takes less activation energy than the unaided reaction. Products form and are released. The enzyme emerges unchanged from the reaction.